Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes. My name is Anamaria Baralt. I am the niece of Jose Menendez. I stand before you today not just as a member of the Menendez family, but as someone who believes in truth, justice, and healing. Before I get started, I just want to say that I know this is an election season, but for us, this is not a political issue. This is about truth, justice, and healing. On behalf of our whole family, it is my honor to formally introduce our new coalition, Justice for Erik and Lyle. Like so many others, I struggled to process the events of that fateful August day and the loss that I felt. Over time, it became clear that there were two other victims there on that day, my cousins Lyle and Erik. Lyle and Erik would continue to be victimized. They would be victims of a system that wouldn't hear them. And they would be victims of a culture that was not ready to listen. They would be mocked. They would be called cold-blooded killers, left to rot in jail and denied any hope of redemption. If Lyle and Erik's case were heard today, with the understanding we now have about abuse and PTSD, there is no doubt in my mind that their sentencing would have been very different. And yet, despite their circumstances, they have chosen a life of light. Without hope of release, they persevered. They have sought to better themselves and serve as a support and inspiration for survivors all over the world. Their continued incarceration serves no rehabilitative purpose. It's time to recognize the injustice they've suffered and allow them the second chance they deserve. Now here we are, both sides of the family united, sharing a new bond of hope. Hope that with the re-examination of their case, a new outcome will be reached. Hope that this 34-year nightmare will end and that we will be reunited as a family. I am here to ask the District Attorney's Office to take into account the full picture, the truth that was hidden for so long. Lyle and Erik deserve a chance to heal, and our family deserves a chance to heal with them. Please join us. Visit www.justiceforerikandlyle.org and sign our petition. And if you'll indulge me, I have two more statements to read. The first is from my mother, 85 years old, Terry Baralt, the sister of Jose Menendez. She can't be with us today due to health challenges, but she sent me this. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person to support my nephews, Lyle and Erik. I begin chemo soon and my doctor says no flights. I need to be strong. I wish to make it clear that I stand firmly with this family. I am Lyle's godmother, and I love them both very, very much. My nephews have spent 3 decades in prison helping others. I have seen great growth in them. Even the law enforcement supervisors and corrections have written letters to the court asking for their resentencing and release. Millions across this country agree. I implore the District Attorney's Office to end our prolonged suffering and release Lyle and Erik back to our family. 35 years is such a long time. My prayer is that I live long enough to see my nephews again and to hug them once more. I have another statement, and this is written by a family member of Marta Cano and Andy Cano, that Andy, the one to whom the letter was written. This is written by one of Marta's children. Thank you for giving our family the opportunity to express our thoughts during this pivotal time in Lyle and Erik's case. Our family's tragedy has always been very public and has been extensively covered by many media platforms. Marta and Andy Cano would have wanted to speak today, but unfortunately they are both unable to do so. Marta is in memory care, but she spent decades supporting Lyle and Erik. Sadly, we lost Andy shortly before his 30th birthday, and we miss him every day. Both Marta and Andy deeply loved Lyle and Erik. They both believed in justice, but they also believed in the second chances and forgiveness. It has been 35 years since this happened, and we feel enough penance has been paid. It is time for them to be released and for all of us to move on and continue healing as a family. Again, if you want to help, please join us at justiceforlyleanderik.org and sign our petition. With that, I'm going to be followed by several members of the Andersen family. First will be Alan Andersen. He's the nephew of Kitty Menendez. Of Kitty Menendez. And the second will be Karen, the niece of Kitty Menendez. But first, Joan VanderMolen, sister of Kitty Menendez. Please join us.
Please know that I'm nervous and full of emotions. I never thought this day would come. I am Kitty's sister. I stand here today with a heavy heart and also with hope and justice and understanding. We have received such an outpouring support in recent weeks, which led us to launch this formal initiative. For many years, I struggled with terms with what happened to my sister's family. It was a nightmare none of us could have imagined. But as details of Lyle and Erik's abuse came to light, it became clear that their actions, while tragic, were the desperate response of two boys trying to survive the unspeakable cruelty of their father. As their aunt, I had no idea of the extent of the abuse they suffered at the hands of my brother-in-law. None of us did. But looking back, I can see the fear and tension that their father had instilled on them. They were just children who could have been protected and were instead brutalized in the most horrific ways. The truth is, Lyle and Erik were failed by the very people who should have protected them, by their parents, by the system, by society at large. When they stood trial, the whole world was ready to believe that the boys could be raped. Was not ready, not ready. The whole world was not ready to believe boys could be raped, or that young men could be victims of sexual violence. Today we know better. We know that abuse has long-lasting effects, and victims of trauma sometimes act in ways that are very difficult to understand. In the years since their conviction, society's understanding of sexual abuse and its psychological impact has grown significantly. We understand that a person doesn't need to fit a specific mold, whether it's gender or socioeconomic status, in order to experience abuse. In their case, if it were tried today, the evidence of their father's abuse would not only be admitted in court, it would provide essential context for why they acted as they did. No jury today would issue such a harsh sentence without taking their trauma into account. Lyle and Erik have already paid a heavy price, discarded by a system that failed to recognize their pain. They have grown, they have changed, and they have become better men despite everything that they've been through. It's time to give them the opportunity to live the rest of their lives free from the shadow of their past. While I recognize it is election season, this isn't about us or about the politics. It's about finding the truth, delivering justice, creating space for healing. I want to thank everyone who has reached out to our family in recent days and weeks, asking how they can help. Today we have an answer. Please sign our petition at www.justiceforerikandlyle.org and urge the district attorney's office, no matter who holds the DA position, to consider all the evidence, both old and new, and to bring together justice for the family. And thank you very much for listening to me. I'm sorry I'm so nervous, I can't help it.
Next we have Alan Andersen, nephew of Kitty Menendez.
Hello, and thank you everybody for being here. Hello, my name is Brian A. Andersen Jr. I am the Kitty of Menendez. I'm Kitty Menendez's nephew. I am proud to be a member of this family and to help spearhead this formal effort to organize and galvanize all the support we have received. Together, I believe we can finally bring justice for my cousins, Lyle and Erik. I've known Lyle and Erik my whole life. I can tell you without a doubt that they are not the villains they've been portrayed as. They were boys, young, scared, and abused by their father in ways no child should ever experience. You, the media, focused so much on their actions, but they never were told and never were able to tell the full story of their abuse that drove them to such desperate measures. When I think about the pain and suffering they endured, it breaks my heart to know that the system failed them so profoundly. They tried to protect themselves the only way they knew how. But instead of being seen as victims, they were vilified. Their father's abuse was dismissed, their trauma ignored, and their truth mocked by millions. Today, we know that trauma can lead to actions that, while difficult to understand, are rooted in survival. Lyle and Erik acted out of fear, but the jury never heard the full story. If their trial were held today, their father's abuse would be front and center in their defense, and I believe the outcome would be very different. Lyle and Erik are not the same people they were 35 years ago. They've shown that they are more than their past. They are survivors and deserve a chance to rebuild their lives. They are no longer a threat to society. Please do not misconstrue this to be political. Justice should prevail and transcend politics. I am asking the district attorney's office, regardless of who the DA is or becomes, to reconsider their case with the knowledge we now have about their abuse. Lyle and Erik deserve a second chance to heal, a chance to be free, and to live the rest of their lives without the shadow of their past hanging over them. I firmly believe that if they were to come to my house, knock on my door, I would answer that door, I would welcome them in with huge hugs, my wife would make them a dinner, and I'd give them a pillow and a place to sleep. Thank you for being here today supporting Justice for Lyle and Erik. Please go to our website, learn the truth about their story, and sign our petition. Thank you.
Please welcome Karen VanderMolen, niece of Kitty Menendez.
Good afternoon. There's a lot of you, and I'm very nervous. My name is Karen VanderMolen Copley. I am Kitty Menendez's niece, and I'm here today speaking out because I have believed for many years that the truth needs to be known about what really happened to my cousins Lyle and Erik. From the beginning, I believed Lyle and Erik were victims of their father's abuse. I grew up knowing and feeling something wasn't right. The feeling in their house and the father-son interactions were just off. But it was not until the first trial that the full horror of what they had to live through came to light. My sister Diane had evidence of their abuse. That was not even allowed to be presented at the trial. I cannot help but think of how things would be different if the world had known the truth back then, or if they had been the Menendez sisters. Adults of abuse have difficulty getting out of their situations, and yet these were two young boys who were never allowed to make decisions on their own. They lived in constant fear and were unable to make any other decisions than the sexual violence that they were taught at the very hands of people who were supposed to love and protect them. Their sometimes misunderstood behaviors were cries for help that many of us wished we had realized and responded to far sooner. What happened is tragic, but I forgive my cousins. I have forgiven them forever because I know they were acting out of fear and desperation. These were children, just 6 and 8 years old, who didn't understand their own bodies. No child should ever have to endure that kind of pain. This abuse trapped them. It was painful and it terrified them. Their father's abuse shattered their lives and the family's lives, and the courts failed them, failed to recognize their trauma, compounding this tragedy. We live in a time now where we understand how abuse can shape a person's actions, male or female. We live in a time now where we understand what trauma does to the brain development of a child. If Lyle and Erik's trial happened today, the outcome would be drastically different. The evidence of their father's abuse would have been a central part of their defense. And it's very likely they would not have received such harsh sentences. Lyle and Erik have spent most of their lives in prison, paying for their actions. During that time, they have become supporters and advocates for children who have suffered sexual violence. I believe they have suffered enough. I ask the district attorneys to take into account the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I believe they have paid for their crimes, and we as a family have all suffered enough. We are here for them and ready to support Erik and Lyle after release. This is a time for truth and justice, and the time for the path to healing. It is time for Erik and Lyle to come home. We are here for them. Please visit our website and sign our petition. We would love nothing more than for our mom to be able to wrap her arms around Erik and Lyle outside prison walls before she is unable to do so. Thank you. Thank you all.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Fredman, and I represent the extended family members of the Menendez family. First of all, the family is gathered here in support, and really thanks everyone for coming out and for being here and for supporting one message, which is, you know, this shouldn't happen again. And this needs to stop now. And that what needs to happen is the consideration of second chances, the consideration of the abuse, and changing what we know in our society to be wrong, and we know in our society to give people second chances. The family's here united. Erik and Lyle have been through so much in 35 years, but these family members have been through so much 35 years. They're going to go across the street now. They're going to meet with the DA's office. They're going to exercise their constitutional rights under Marcy's laws to be heard. And they would respect and ask if they could make that journey peacefully so that they can share their truth, desires, and honesty with the DA's office. And again, you know, thank you for the support and for being here. And Mark Garagos, thank you.